Hello everyone, welcome back to Raw Piece. It's been about 2 years to the day that I joined SAIT for my college tuition, and now that it's finally over, I think it's finally time to come back and start making videos again. I am going to kind of go off the cuff with my thoughts on one of my favorite childhood shows as a early tot, Ben 10. Now this show is everything kid me loved. It had great characters, great villains, an intriguing plot, and packed lore. Now to start off the main cast, we got Max Tennyson, Gwen, and Ben. And I think that's a good range for the main characters. And I feel like they bounce off each other very well, with Gwen being the more astute and intelligent side to Ben's goofy stupidity. And then you have Max, just kind of an overlooking presence to keep the kids safe. And he'll definitely play a larger role in this show, but the name of the show is Ben 10. And obviously, as every piece of marketing has shown for Ben 10, Ben gets an alien watch and he gets to turn into 10, cough cough, even more, aliens and help save the day. But when it comes to me, I love the aliens. I love the different custom aliens that some people have made in fan art. I love everything that 5YL is doing with Ben 10 and Danny Phantom. From one Rob to another, that shit's dope. Keep that up. That's amazing. But for me, I gotta be honest, I love Ben, but I love the villains. You got Dr. Aloysius James Animo. This man, this scientist, he puts every ounce of effort to make scientific marvels, which should win him about 35 Nobel Peace Prizes. But, I mean, he never gets the respect he deserves, and that's why he lashes out. Honestly, it's a pretty relatable character. And just as a little side, before we get into the rest of the long list of plot points, villains, I can't go any further without talking about the mayor of Sparksville, Earl. Dude, this guy is the quintessential I don't give a fuck character, and I absolutely love it. I loved it back when I watched it as a kid, and I hope we see him someday, maybe, in more Ben 10 media. I don't know. Rob from Ink Tank, maybe you could introduce Earl, maybe back in the 5YL timeline, maybe? Who knows? Anyways, back to the villains. Personally, I gotta be honest, one of my favorite villains overall, which I'll talk about at the end, is Kevin. But before we look at the best, we kind of got to look at one of the more underrated ones, which is Rojo. Now, personally, with Rojo, I got her character, but I just feel like she was never really herself. She was never able to be her own character. She was just being influenced by Vilgax, which, whoops, spoilers, it's not like everybody on the planet knows who Vilgax is. But I think it was a good attempt to try and create that kind of, Earthling that's being controlled by Vilgax to get the Omnitrix. And I think it was a good attempt, but where they really shine is the main villains, like Zombozo. Now, dude, I hate clowns. Clowns are terrifying, they're disgusting, I hate them, I want them to never exist in this world. But the fact that they have him as a Ben 10 villain, oh, you gotta love him. He's so good. His humor is so different. And I love how this was the introduction to Ben's ectonerite transformation, Ghost Freak. And Ghost Freak is pretty much my favorite alien in Ben's watch, pretty much. But just, it was so cool. Like, having Zombozo, and I'm pretty sure I don't even know what Zombozo is, but I just love the fact that he didn't even need his 3 henchmen. He made the act himself. Now, switching from comedy to magic, we've got one of the first kind of the only villain, there's like 2 villains, but one of the main villains that Gwen fights, and that is Hex. He's pretty cool. I love his power set. I love the fact that he's all about having magic in this clearly science fiction universe. We finally have an introduction to magic to kind of balance that, and that's where Gwen really shines. I mean, she's an anodite, but nobody knows about that yet. And I just love that Hex goes for the MacGuffin, the quote-unquote Arcamata book of spells, and he tries to use it to enhance his already pretty powerful charms of Bazel, but none of that matters because Gwen finally gets to show off some skill as her kind of alter ego, Lucky Girl. And that, they could have gotten this whole show with Ben being the main protagonist, and it would have just kind of been this, not like it would have been fine, but the fact that they gave that to Gwen and allowed her to also fill that hero role, I freaking love. I think that's cool. In the first show, they kind of really showed off Gwen's potential, whereas in the rest of the shows, it's literally just Green Lantern, Pink. It's like, they're just constructs. You actually had something creative in the original, and you just made them into Anyways, one of the last few villains I'll talk about. But one quick thing I want to get to before I get into my last little bit of this is I love that they dedicate an entire episode on a conspiracy theory. Like this one guy, this random ass guy, grabs Ben when he's in his Galvan form, gray matter, and he's such a conspiracy theorist. He's such a Area 51 nut, and it's hilarious. I love it, and I love how that episode is where they introduce the Forever Knights, which are kind of the ultimate evil of the Earth that battles Ben. I mean, there's shit outside the universe, but on Earth, it's usually the Forever Knights. And that kind of world building is just so quintessential in the growth of it, and I just love how they had that forethought. But speaking of forethought, they made the ultimate relatable character in Clancy. This man, he likes bugs, which I don't like bugs, but you know. And this guy just does not want to leave his house. He just doesn't. He doesn't want to give up the place that he's lived all his life. And I feel that. I feel that, Clancy. But obviously this guy uses bugs as his main form of combat, and I think it's creepy in a good way. It just makes you unsettled when he fights Ben with like this armor of bugs. The one other thing of note about Clancy's introduction, and this is the one and only time besides Swamp Fire when he had that evolution with Ben going through puberty, this was the one time where they really had a divergence of the status quo. I mean, there was another one with Dr. Animo messing with the Omnitrix and getting a piece off of it and causing fusions, but this was really something that changed up how Ben's aliens worked. And I think that worked to its favor. I just kind of wish they did more with it, you know? To kind of slide into a pre-end, I want to talk about my personal favorite character besides Ben in this show, and that's Kevin. Dude, this Osmosian is so cool. I love this guy. I love how he uses his powers. I love his backstory, which, as convoluted as it's going to get, it's still reasonable. And I just love the fact that he's able to just sap not only energy, but power itself. It's so cool, and that really builds into his character going into the rest of the shows. And I feel like Kevin has had the most growth overall over any other character that we've seen. But there's only one villain that's more iconic than Kevin. That is the big bad himself, Vilgax, conqueror of however many fucking worlds. This guy had such a good build-up, and it had such a good payoff, except for the whole what if episode at the end of season 4, but I'm not going to get into that just yet. This guy was so cool. I loved the voice actor. I wish they would have kept the voice actor for the rest of the incarnations of this character. He had such an overwhelming stature and just intimidation, and he's basically the quintessential Ben 10 villain, and I freaking love it. I love it so much. It's so cool. It's a shame what they did with him in later seasons, but OG, Vilgax, and Ben, that will remain in my mind forever. Just that whole episode of Vilgax and Ben's first interaction that isn't in a rebooted format. But anyways, this has been kind of my thoughts on everything that has to do with the first season of Ben 10. I hope you've enjoyed this little romp into my nostalgic brain, and yeah, I guess I'll see you guys in the next one. Hopefully you enjoyed. Peace.